Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/KYHistoryPod. Welcome back to the Kentucky History Podcast. I'm your host, Jameson Cable, and I'm joined here with David Kirkpatrick. David, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You?
Doing pretty good, and we got a special guest here with us, Fred Nez Keams of the Native Flute Gathering. He's joined us here to talk a bit about his work and himself. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we are excited to learn a little bit of history today, a little bit about what you are working with and what the Native Flute Gathering all is, and some performances as well that you got coming up and so forth. But before we get started in any of that, let's just hear about your Kentucky connection and a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Fred Nez Keams. I'm from the Navajo Nation tribe, born and raised there. Been here in Kentucky for 17 years. Live here in Mercer County. Just moved here. We lived in Lawrenceburg, and now we got a little farm outside of Harrodsburg, and I work over at St. Joe Hospital. I've been there for going on 3.5 years now. So, but in my tradition, when we first start anything, we always introduce ourselves in Navajo. So I'll just do that. Yat a class in Fred Nez Keams, yeah. Nanish Asia Kachin in Shle Tapaha, Washishin, Hanagashi Dashiche, Kachini Dashinale. I just said I am Fred. I am Navajo, born for the red bottom charcoal people, and my my grandfather is the one who walks around, and my maternal grandfather is red bottom water. That's how we introduce ourselves in Navajo.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
That is neat.
So you said you live in Harrodsburg and so forth. How did you get started with the Native Flute Gathering? I know you make them, you play as well. How did that all begin?
Well, I started the flute. The flute has always been with me ever since I was probably in middle school. That's where it really came to me, and over the years, it just came in and out of my life. And when I moved here to Kentucky, that's when the flute really started to speak to me, and so I started to I started to research, and I got very curious of making it. So I started, and it took me about a year to actually make one flute to play. And as I got into that 1 year, a lot of things came to me, and so I actually reached out to this one person named Roger McGee, which became my mentor, and we talked over the phone, and he actually was telling me how to make the flute over the phone. But it was mainly me that all the work in and trials and error to get where I need to be. So after I got where I need to be, and then um, it just really came to me, mind, spirit, and soul. Just started playing. I didn't even have to try. It just came out, and after that, we lived in Lawrenceburg. Then there was our landlord grandchild was going to school, and she actually told the teacher that, we have a Native American that lives across the street that lives in our house, and the teacher told her that there's no more Native Americans. So after
Oh,
that, so and she said, see, I make fry bread and Navajo tortillas, so I would make the tortillas and fry bread and take it over there, and she told the teacher that he makes Native American fry bread and he brings it over, but she didn't believe her. So
Wow.
after that, we just my wife and I, we talked, and then our mentor, and then uh, so we decided to put on the first Native Dawn. By then, I started to know a lot of other flute makers and flute players. Uh, so we just decided to go ahead and do it. And we talked to the city of Lawrenceburg, and at the time, nobody was doing nothing with the green, the place down where they have that little park place where they do performances, but nobody was using it. So we're the ones that really started using it. We had our flute gathering for like maybe 8 years. Yeah, about 8 years. And then there in Lawrenceburg, and then it just started to grow more and more and more. Next thing we started having flute players and dancers from all over the United States coming from Washington, from Oregon, from New Mexico, Arizona, all the way down from Tennessee, up from Michigan, New York. We had just about a lot of amazing flute players over time, but everything that we did came out of our own pocket. But we did it out of love and just to educate the people about many other tribes, not just Navajo, and to try to keep the native flute and traditional going, and let people know that we are still here. So that's what and the Native Dawn is. When I first started playing, there's other uh, flute festivals that go on, and I couldn't get into any of them. Nobody wanted to really let me play. So when we started the Native Dawn, I told my wife, I said, we're gonna stay away from all the big names performers, and we're gonna get a lot of these upcoming beginners and people, other flute players that need to be heard. So that's what Native Dawn is all about.
well, I can say that I was able to watch at Fort Herod back this past summer. You were there performing, and it was really impressive. I don't know much about the tradition or anything to that nature, but I was impressed, just with the skill in the song and so forth. Before we get into my next question, anything, David, real quick?
Yeah, I always found it so interesting that you mentioned making that transition from the Western United States to here. And if it's out of order, Jameson, let me know. We can move it later. But have you noticed a big difference in the way the music is conducted in the East, in the woodland area, as opposed to how it is in the West? Or are there a number of similarities that it just makes you comfortable? You move right into one from the other, or is there really a difference?
No, well, they do have. When I first started playing the flute, I thought it was a big community, and as I got to know more flute players and being a flute maker and getting my flute all over and people starting to know who I am in the flute community, it became small. And after that, that's where my tradition came in. And I spoke and I teach more about my culture. And today, a lot of them uh, are non-native, but do have heritage. So that divides there, and um, I think that's what separates us from um, natives and non-natives. That we do carry a tradition and songs passed down from generation to generation, and our ancestors that leave us traditional songs and learning more about um, like for me, I'm learning more about uh, the traditional way of playing than just playing the flute, going up and down the scale. My goal is to play more of the old traditional non-tuning warble flutes, and that's where I try to uh, teach more about and learn more about myself too.
Excellent. Excellent.
One thing you talk about these songs being passed down, and I mean, and this is just a general question that it pops in my head as you're talking about these traditional songs. How old are some of the songs that you know? Like how far back would can you trace them, or just is it just that ingrained in the tradition?
I'd probably say the songs go back to about maybe the 1900s, the beginning of the 1900s. Because I do have some old traditional songs. I think the oldest recording I have is from Richard Foolsbull, and uh, they're actually was sent to me by a friend of mine, and it's actually in the Smithsonian Museum. And when I listen to it, it's a very unique sound, and you have to have acquired taste for it. It's if you would hear it, it probably sound just like somebody blowing in a pipe. But back then, there was no guidance of anybody how the flute should be made. The flute was actually made to the maker's ear and whatever he heard and whatever he was going through at that time. And that's where all his songs came from. So when I listen to that, I try to emulate and uh, play whatever he's playing and try to incorporate it into my playing. And when I play, depending on what event or where I'm playing at, uh, I have different styles. And like when I'm playing by myself, I try to play traditional, and then I play like my soft songs, I guess you would say. And I love playing jazz with the flute. So
Yeah. Um, well, when you start thinking about traditional songs, is there any specific stories behind them, or anything like that, or any songs? Like I guess I don't want to say like, what's your favorite song, but in that sense, like what do you in forms of those sorts of storytelling, I guess.
well, I do talk about the stories that were told to me by other flute players, but as for me, growing up, there was really nobody uh, that goes way back to playing the flute. Like for me, the Anasazi flute is my traditional flute, and really, there's nobody out there playing it. Maybe a few that play it, but and I don't know the stories on that, but I do know that they did find flutes dug up and made out of bone, and it's actually an Anasazi style or Anasazi flute, which is just like uh, um, a hollow um, like a hollow tube, but it's actually made out of bone. So the flute that I play is a woodland. Let's see, wait, no, not woodland. Yeah, well, I do play woodland and the Comanche Lakota style flutes, meaning that the flute, um, like, how do I say this? Like the voice comes out of the block. Everything is built in the block. And the woodland is actually the voice is actually built in the flute. If that makes sense.
I guess.
I know it's kind of hard to explain, but
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, so each and the way, so what I understand, I mean, there's different types of flutes, as in even different types of for different tribes and so forth. I mean, is that correct?
yeah,
Or and each one of those flutes, it may even have a different style as how to play and so forth, or how to play it.
yes. So that's what I want to learn how to do is make the traditional ones that have. I love the traditionals because you can make your own songs that nobody can replicate. You can stays with you, but today a lot of these flutes are made with a pentatonic scale. So like if I'm playing on YouTube or wherever, and then they see my fingering, they can actually learn my songs. But with the traditional flute, they can follow my fingers, but they will not have the flute that's actually tuned to whatever I'm playing.
Oh wow. Okay. So I mean, honestly, your instrument becomes personal. Like, it's just, only you can play the songs on it because you're the only one who knows
Mhm.
how to manipulate it and play it. Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so that's where I like the traditionals because the traditional ones sound more. It tells more of a story. Just when I'm playing it, uh, they're not tuned to any key, so you're actually learning the flute of what notes go with what, and then you're making your song. Then by the time you're finished, it's a beautiful melody, and you can tell the song has words to it, but you don't know. And that's where maybe later on you can add your own traditional songs to it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. David, go ahead. Or did you?
It sounds like the making the instruments themselves is its own experience. And I've heard people say that of other instruments as well when they're crafting it or they're putting it together, that draws something out in you that makes the playing, that much easier or that much more engaging on a personal level. Is the Anasazi, is that your favorite to make because of the tradition behind it, because of your cultural tradition, or do you enjoy working with the woodland? What's easiest to craft and what's most enjoyable as a craftsman?
Well, like my mentor did give me an Anasazi flute. He couldn't play it, and one day I went to visit him in Oregon, and the flute that sat in the corner, I picked it up, and he said he could not play it, and I just picked it up and started playing it, and he's all like, hey, "That's yours." So I came back with that Anasazi, and sometimes I can play it, sometimes I can't. Um, but the flute that I make is just the regular Navajo flute. I call it Navajo flute because I'm a full blood, and if a non-native that makes flute, they have to put style in it. So I just say Navajo flute. And when I first started making flutes, I went through many trials of error with different wood, hardwood, softwood. Exotic wood, and I just kind of drove me crazy. And so I sat back and I started really thinking about my culture, and then I noticed that everything that we do back home, we use cedar. We Cedar is the only wood out there. I mean, besides pine and aspen, pinon. but cedar is the one that we use a lot for wood, for heating our homes, for cooking, for ceremonies. So that's what I went. That's what I picked up the cedar, and then so when I started using cedar, this beautiful sound came out that I really liked. It was the sound of the flute became crispy, and I could do a lot of different techniques with my tongue that made this flute sound good. And cedar keeps a lot of the moisture out. And when you play the flute, you can play it longer than versus a different wood, because the condensation will build up and you'll lose its voice. But cedar, when you use that, it don't do that. You can play for a long time and it doesn't give out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's so. And honestly, you're kind of a craftsman and a musician here. You do both, which is pretty impressive. How long does it take you to make a flute? Or
Start to finish, it probably takes me about a good week. It takes me about 3 days to actually get where I need to be, carving and everything. But it's actually the tuning that takes a long time, because actually I burn my holes with the hot iron, and when I burn the flute, it actually heats up the whole flute and the wood, and it brings the pitch higher. So if I rush and I burn the holes too big, uh, then the flute is pretty much gone, because I can't go back. I mean, I can go back and fix it, but it won't be as pretty as uh, people like them. But most of my flutes, they're not pretty. A lot of them are like they have duct tape and glue here and there, and that's all my personal flutes. And yeah, so you look at my collection, is like there's always something wrong with this flute, but it has a beautiful voice to it.
that's what matters, right?
Yeah, I thought I was the only one that was kind of nuts using duct tape, but one of the big performers named Bill Miller, who got to perform with him over in Louisville at 4th Street Live, and I actually kind of glanced into his flute case or whatever, and I saw some of his flutes that had duct tape on it too, and I was like, oh, okay. And this is the guy is a Grammy winner, 2-3 time Grammy winner, and he has duct tape on his flutes too. So I was like, that kind of made me feel better. And but yeah, so it takes me about a week, start to finish, and I actually play my flute with a piano, and that's how I know when it's tuned. And because the piano, when you hit a key, it's tuned to that one key. It doesn't change. So when you play with the piano, you can tell if the flute is off or not, or if it's flat, then you have to retune it. But I try to tune my flutes at 70 degrees. But when someone orders a flute, I always ask them, where they're from, because like up north, the weather's cold all the time. So when the flute hits the coal, it's always flat. Then versus somebody that lives down, like in Florida or Georgia, where it's always hot and humid. So the flute will be, the flute will stay warm. So I'll tune it. I got a verse visa. So people up north, I'll tune it a little high. Then versus someone that lives down like in Florida, I tune it flat, because so when it gets hot, the flute will it'll go to the next. It'll be tuned higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A wood's a tricky substance there.
I don't really think it happens to hardwood, but with cedar, it really fluctuates with sound. Like when I played, I did have a band, and we were all acoustic. And like when we played, like when it's really cold, like the guitar tuner, I mean the guitar player and the bass player would be trying to tune uh, their guitar and bass, and I'll be holding my flute against my body to keep it warm. Or like when we're playing in the festival and it's really hot and humid, and you know I try to cool my flutes down by waving them, and so
Techniques that probably a lot of people just don't think about, the trials of a musician.
yeah, yeah, and a long time ago I used to make my flutes. I would cut them off right where they need to be for that one key. But later on, as I started playing, like I was saying, the uh, the weather plays a big role in your flute. So I actually started adding tuning holes to my flute. People call those the direction holes, and there are four holes at the end of the flute. And I started using that because, like I said, when you play like in the cold or in the hot heat, I could cover that hole to bring the flute up or down just a little.
Yeah. Um, well, yeah, you don't think about those things. I've played the guitar, back when I was a little younger and all that kind of stuff. But I was always indoors, so I guess I never really thought that, about that, especially being outdoors and stuff. So you make the flutes, and you play as well. How can people get a hold of, like, get you to make a flute? What do they need to do?
Well, you can get hold of me on Facebook. Just look up my name, Fred Keams, on Facebook. When we first started, we did have a website, but it really didn't do us any justice. So I probably sell like one flute in 6 months. But with Facebook and Instagram, that's where the social media is. So I just post, the flutes that I make or when I'm playing, and that's when people get interested in. And but I usually tell them, like, give me a couple of weeks, because my flutes are handmade. They're not uh, produced, mass produced with machines, and mine are hand carved and made one at a time. And the flute is like a one of a kind because of how it looks and what it sounds like, and uh, the color of the flute of the wood. So, but when I first started playing, a friend of mine that really got me into it. That's when I was middle school. I got a flute off of him, and I actually gave it away to a relative. And after that, I didn't have time to. I mean, I couldn't find another one. So when I moved here to Kentucky, I started looking for a flute, and I actually came across people that were making it, the native style flute, but they cost too much. They were way up there, like 300, 400, $500 just for a flute.
Yeah.
And so that's what really pushed me to start making my own flutes. So when I first got, my first flute started sounding pretty good, and then I told my wife, I said, no, you know what, I'm just gonna keep one price for the mid range, 160. It was 150, but I moved it up because postage. So, but day one I started making, it's always been 150. So all my flutes were $150, because the more I played, it became good medicine. It didn't matter where I played, who I played. There was always somebody out in the crowd. There was always somebody there standing, listening, going through some kind of trials in their life and depression, loss of loved one, needed something, veterans. So the flute just really helped them and it helped me. And so I always think the flute is a good medicine. So I just kept it that one price even to this day.
That's pretty good. That's pretty impressive.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have like, a couple of people have reached out and say, why can't you raise your price? And you're full blood and you have a lot of non-natives that make it, and theirs is like in the thousands, and it's like, and here you are, it's only $150, and that's like, it's not about the money. It's not about giving flutes away. It's about sharing the culture and how helping people. Uh, if it helped me, I'm sure it'll help a lot of others.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that as medicine. Do you, in the lyrics and things that you write for the traditional songs that you create, do you find the same theme carries through? Is that therapeutic in a way?
Yeah, it does help me. Helps me become a better flute player and make more traditional sounds. But actually, the flute is actually a recording for calling a mate, playing for the ladies. It's actually a love song. I mean, it's actually a love instrument in the native way. So when a person admires a lady and he wants to win her heart over, and he would serenade her heart with the native flute by playing her a song, and that's where the native flute became a love instrument.
Ah,
So, but different tribes use the flute in different ways. I know that the Hopis and Zunis, they do flute ceremonies, but they're, even though they're right next to me, our neighbors, as we live in the same land. Like the Navajo Nation and the Zuni and the Hopi live right in our Navajo Nation, but they have their own little tribe and they have their own little land, but they're very close off, more than what the Navajos are. They don't share their culture. They keep it very close to themselves. So, but I know that they do the ceremonies with the flute. So I I don't know about. I would love to see one of those, but I don't know if they ever do have them.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's quite interesting. The different, I never thought of the flute being a love instrument, but how old would the flute have been used? Do you know?
Well, the flute is actually the third oldest instrument in the world, and if you really look at every ethnic and every race, every one of them has their own traditional flutes, like the Mayans. Like if you watch the movie 300, with the Spartans, you see the guy playing the flute. He's playing actually two of them, and that's actually like a drone. And so every everyone all over the world have their own flute. So that's how far it goes back. We actually went to the Noah's Ark up in uh, I can't remember the place, up in Kentucky. And
Gallatin County, I believe.
yeah, we were actually walking around. We got to visit the Noah's Ark, and I guess we went to like the third floor, I think. And there's actually flutes on the wall, and I was like, "Look, there's flutes on the wall," and they're actually like the Anasazi flute style.
Oh.
And
Wow.
uh, so there's flutes all over the world, some different styles. So it's the third oldest instrument. First you got the rattle, then you got the drum, and then you got the flute.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, my musical knowledge is pretty limited, but that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. We're gonna pause right there with our interview with Fred Nez Keams of the Native Flute Gathering. Just a reminder, you can find links to the Facebook page in the description. And thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Kentucky History Channel, where we strive to bring you all the Kentucky history content you want and you deserve. Kentucky is a part of all of us, and we plan on covering all the history we can, from Pike County to Fulton County, from Louisville to Harlan. Here on our YouTube channel, you can find many videos dedicated to different events, people, governors, and places in Kentucky. There's something for everybody. While you're here, if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button and the notification button so you get notified anytime new Kentucky history is available. And if you want to support the channel, we have a Patreon page as well, or patreon.com/kyhistorypod. You've probably heard about Daniel Boone, but what about the rest of the frontiersmen who came to Kentucky and settled? That's what we want to bring to the Kentucky History Channel. The stories of the untold, the stories of those forgotten. One thing to expect on our channel is great Kentucky content. Some stories that you've never heard of. The Night Riders, who began in western Kentucky. Bloody Monday, the riots in Louisville. The assassination of Governor Goebel, the only governor ever assassinated in the United States. Stories from all over Kentucky, stories that are unforgettable once you've heard them. You can find out who counties in Kentucky are named after and how your county got started. From beginning to end, we plan to document every county in Kentucky, all 120. Reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos. You can also check out our podcast episodes. You can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many more. We're always seeking to find more Kentucky history so we can bring it to you. The viewers, the listeners, we want all the stories and all the events from Kentucky's great history to be told and shared everywhere.